Señores, la Corte Suprema de los Estados Unidos ha vuelto a frenar estos esfuerzos de Trump para querer deportar a inmigrantes detenidos bajo una ley muy antigua y actualmente muy polémica. Hablamos de la ley de enemigos extranjeros. Un fallo dividido, pero contundente, ¿no? El alto tribunal ha ordenado que se detuviera temporalmente la deportación de un grupo de inmigrantes en Texas y ha enviado una señal muy clara al gobierno. No pueden expulsar a las personas sin darles la oportunidad real de defenderse. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Muchas gracias por nuevamente estar conmigo en esta emisión. Hoy veremos, señores, cómo la Corte Suprema de los Estados Unidos acaba de bloquear y enviarle un mensaje muy claro al presidente de los Estados Unidos. No puedes deportar sin darles una oportunidad. Pero no será lo único que hablaremos el día de hoy. También veremos cómo los republicanos entran en crisis tras nuevos escándalos ilegales que acaban de ser expuestos, mientras en el Congreso de los Estados Unidos los demócratas recientemente se están pronunciando. Así que los invito a que hoy me acompañen. Veremos mucha información interesante y contundente. Bueno, señores, este caso llega a la Corte Suprema tras una acción muy rápida del gobierno de Trump. ¿Qué es lo que buscaba? Deportar a un grupo de inmigrantes detenidos en el norte de Texas. Según las autoridades, algunos de ellos estaban vinculados con pandillas. Entonces, junto a esto se justificó su expulsión de inmediato, bajo la ley de enemigos extranjeros. Si es que no saben qué es esta ley, hablamos de una norma histórica que originalmente fue utilizada para controlar a extranjeros durante tiempos de guerra. Pero bueno, la Corte Suprema no lo vio así. Por una mayoría de 7-2, dictaminó que estos inmigrantes no recibieron suficientes avisos para impugnar su deportación. Un aviso con apenas 24 horas de antelación a la deportación, sin información sobre cómo ejercer el derecho al debido proceso para impugnar dicha deportación. Seguramente no es suficiente, pero en las palabras escritas por los jueces mayoritarios. Pero bueno, veamos de qué se trata esta noticia.
We have some breaking news to tell you about from the United States Supreme Court. Moments ago, in a 7-2 decision, the justices blocked the Trump administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan migrants under the Alien Enemies Act. It is a complicated ruling, with the court asking a lower court to make some big decisions, but it is nonetheless a legal setback for the Trump administration, who wants to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport more migrants without standard due process. Joining us to help us understand this breaking news is MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Charlie is with us as well.
Nicole, I should always know better than to put my hair in a ponytail on a Friday night, because that's just asking for the Supreme Court to come to us. This decision, you mentioned due process, this decision is the court saying again that people who are immigrants, even if they are undocumented immigrants, even if they are alleged members of a Venezuelan gang, are entitled to that due process. The court is refusing here to say exactly how much notice somebody who is an alleged member of Tren de Aragua is entitled to. But what they are saying is, we're going to continue our prior order that prevents the administration from taking a group of people that are being held in a detention facility in a certain area of Texas. These are the people that were previously boarded on buses that NBC News literally chased on their way up the highway to an airport and back around again. They cannot take those folks, put them on a plane to El Salvador. And the reason they can't do that is because the court wants a lower court to decide two things. How likely are the plaintiffs to succeed in their argument that the Alien Enemies Act is not fairly applied to them? What does the Alien Enemies Act mean, for example, when it talks about a predatory incursion or an invasion or a war? Has Trump fairly applied it to this set of facts? And they want the lower court to decide, are the plaintiffs likely to succeed on that? The second thing they want the appeals court to decide is how much notice these people are entitled to. And the Supreme Court is saying emphatically here, whatever that number is, 24 hours ain't enough. Go back to the drawing board and decide. And the final thing that they're saying, and this is really important, is that this injunction that they're continuing right now is going to last for some time. It's going to last until that lower court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, not only makes its decision, but until any petition for review by the Supreme Court is disposed of. We're used to thinking about all of these emergency cases that are percolating through the court. But you and I both know in the ordinary course, it takes a long time for a case to go through the traditional appeals process. So this is a sign to the Trump administration. Not only can't you do this now, but you might be stymied in doing this to this particular group of people for months to come. And you can't go into any other court in the country where you might have detainees and allege that 24 hours notice is going to be enough to give people the due process that the court here, a 7-person majority on this court, is reasserting is imperative to give not only to citizens, not only to undocumented immigrants, but even to alleged members of Tren de Aragua.
Okay, let me ask you 3 questions. 1, does this only protect from deportation to El Salvador the people who were, does this do anything for the people that they already used the Alien Enemies Act to send to this brutal prison in El Salvador?
No. Those people are being, I don't want to say dealt with, but there is a separate court proceeding still in front of James Boasberg, who's the district court judge who originally had Alien Enemies Act proceedings in front of him. And one of the things that is being decided before him is, does he have jurisdiction even over the claims of people who are now in CCOT or other facilities in El Salvador?
But so this was about the Supreme Court telling those, and Von Hilliard, I think, was doing that great reporting to turn the buses around, that you couldn't send them out. Boasberg also said, turn the planes around.
Boasberg did say, turn the planes around, and he was about to engage in some discovery about who was being contemptuous of his order when the Supreme Court vacated that order that he had issued saying, turn the planes around. Well, now the plaintiffs have come back before him, people representing those people who are now in El Salvador, and essentially said, okay, the Supreme Court told us that we had to file these cases in the places people were detained. Obviously, we can't do that for people who are in El Salvador already. And we have to file these cases in a particular way. We have to bring them as habeas corpus petitions. So we're going to do that for you now. And Boasberg has said to them, first, I have to figure out whether I have jurisdiction. And what that turns on is, does the United States have what he calls constructive custody over these people in El Salvador? It depends on, is the U.S. sufficiently in control of them, even though, nominally speaking, they're in El Salvador? And he, at the last hearing, quoted back to the government lawyer Trump's interview with our colleague Kristen Welker and a number of other statements from folks in the administration that he said are a good indicator that the United States, despite all of the kabuki theater we've seen in Oval Office press availabilities, that, yes, the United States does have constructive custody, but that issue has not yet been decided. Stay tuned for that.
So, Charlie, what we have here is an instance where the Supreme Court is saying some of the same things that protesters at Chuck Grassley's town halls are saying, which is due process. And I know it's a very low bar, but we do still have today a 7-2 ruling that is in the vein of affirming due process rights in this country, even for people here illegally, as Lisa Rubin just said, even for people who are accused but not proven to be members of a gang.
That seems to be a very, very important point. Lisa explained this very, very well. I have a very, very quick question, though. Was it 7-2 or really was it 8-1? Because I'm just looking very, very quickly at it, and I'm not the lawyer here, but it looks like Justice Kavanaugh wrote a concurring opinion, and only Justice Alito wrote a dissent, which would suggest that you have 7 or 8 of the Supreme Court justices that say, wait, we are not prepared to ignore due process, and that this would come down basically a week after Stephen Miller rolls out of the White House and says they are seriously considering suspending habeas corpus. And the court is certainly sending, the majority of the court, sending a very clear message that, no, we are not prepared to ignore due process rights for these migrants. So I think that the number of justices that signed on to this, the speed with which the court acted, really does send a signal that in fact people do care about due process, and that the court is going to draw a red line. They may give Donald Trump in other cases things that he wants, but in this case, they have been relatively consistent, I think, and at least trying to, fire these shots across the bow that, no, sorry, not on our watch. We're not going to be doing this.
Well, Charlie, to answer your question about how the split was, the dissent by Justice Alito is also signed by Justice Thomas. I want to go to your point, though, about Justice Kavanaugh is well taken, because one of the things Justice Kavanaugh does is he would actually go further than the court was. He basically says, look, there's no reason not to engage with the merits right now. The circumstances, I'm going to read from the last paragraph of his concurrence, if you'll forgive me this. The circumstances call for a prompt and final resolution, which likely can be provided only by this court. At this juncture, I would prefer not to remand to the lower court and further put off this court's final resolution of the critical legal issues. We saw shades of that yesterday in the birthright citizenship argument, right? Where you saw folks from Justice Kagan, Justice Jackson, essentially saying, why are you before us here on this procedural issue when we could be dealing with the substance?
Ok, amigos, detrás de este fallo hay un principio que es fundamental: el derecho al debido proceso. Hablamos de que esto es garantizado por la quinta enmienda de la Constitución de los Estados Unidos. O sea, este derecho no solo aplica a los ciudadanos, sino que también a extranjeros presentes en territorio estadounidense, ¿no? Y aunque Trump, y su equipo han estado insistiendo en utilizar estas herramientas legales que son muy extremas para poder agilizar estas deportaciones, la Corte Suprema les ha hecho un pequeño recordatorio de que eso no se puede hacer ignorando los derechos básicos. El fallo citó lo siguiente e incluso precedentes propios. Reforzaron que incluso en casos muy delicados como es el control de seguridad nacional, el Estado no puede actuar unilateralmente sin respetar los mínimos procesos. Amigos, aunque este fallo fue mayoritario, no fue unánime, obviamente, ¿no? Hablamos de que los jueces conservadores, que son Samuel Alito, Clarence Thomas, se opusieron a esto. Ni siquiera así lograron ponerse de acuerdo entre ellos sobre el alcance del desacuerdo, ¿no? Por el otro lado tenemos al juez Brett Kavanaugh, que sí se alineó con la mayoría, una vez más mostrando, ¿no?, que no todos los magistrados conservadores están dispuestos a avalar cada medida del presidente de los Estados Unidos. Amigos, en democracia los límites existen para proteger a todos, incluyendo a aquellos que no tienen voz en Washington. Esta semana la Corte Suprema nos ha recordado que incluso en materia de seguridad nacional no todo vale. Y mientras Trump insiste en querer romper ciertas reglas, instituciones como esta son esta línea roja que él no puede ignorar. Pues bueno, amigos, pasemos a la siguiente noticia, porque no fue lo único interesante en los últimos días. Como bien sabemos, Trump siempre está envuelto en problemas, ¿no? Pero en esta ocasión el escándalo ha llegado a otra figura del entorno trumpista. Hablamos de Pam Bondi. Acaba de quedar atrapada en un escándalo ilegal, lo cual, amigos, podría explotar directamente en cara de Trump. Antes de explicarles este bombazo de noticia, quiero que escuchemos este fragmento del congresista Joe Neguse, que pone en contexto un poco esta situación por la cual estará atravesando Pam Bondi, ¿no? Escuchemos esto.
Our 26th president, Teddy Roosevelt, once said that no man who is corrupt, no man who tolerates corruption in others, can do his duty by the community. That admonition rings true today. 4 years ago, I led an effort to ban stock trading by members of Congress, joined with colleagues on both sides of the aisle. For 4 years, we have tried to convince this chamber to ban members of Congress from trading stocks. Why? Because members of Congress should be serving their communities, their constituents, and their country, not their stock portfolios. In that 4-year span, 48 months, 1,400 days, how many millions of dollars have members of Congress in this body made from trading stocks? It's unconscionable. It's a practice that should have ended years ago. And we have continued to beat that drum month after month, week after week, day after day, and we will keep doing it until a majority in this body joins the rest of the American people, the public, in supporting a ban to this insidious practice. And I'm grateful to Representative Magaziner for continuing to beat that drum, leading the effort now over the last 2 years. It feels as though we're on the precipice, as Mr. Magaziner noted, of finally getting traction in this chamber to end this practice. But the one cautionary note I would offer, Mr. Speaker, is that in that 4-year span, as I mentioned, this journey, this battle that we have waged, again, colleagues of mine on both sides of the aisle, to ban stock trading, I have heard virtually every excuse in the book from some of my colleagues. It's too complicated, there are competing bills, the legislative text is complex. This is very simple. Just ban it. Not 5 years from now, not next year. Let's just put a bill on the floor to ban it, period. Members of Congress will no longer be able to trade stocks. Simple as that. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that my colleagues will join me, join Mr. Magaziner, join the coalition that is organized around this issue, so that we can find.
Y es que, como bien lo señala, el uso de la información privilegiada en el Congreso, ¿no?, es algo que en este momento está completamente descontrolado. Y sí, señores, hay republicanos que están metidos hasta el cuello. Ojo, también hay demócratas que se están aprovechando del mismo sistema. Sin embargo, pues este caso, ¿no?, del entorno de Trump, hablamos desde Marjorie Taylor Greene hasta su propia familia, están alcanzando un nuevo nivel muy, pero muy descarado. Ahora se suma nada menos que la fiscal general de Estados Unidos, o sea, hablamos de la persona encargada de hacer cumplir las leyes, y está rompiéndolo sin pudor alguno. Según se reveló la siguiente nota ProPublic, Pam Bondi vendió más de $1 millón en acciones de la empresa mediática de Trump, ¿no? Hablamos de la misma que maneja Truth Social. Pero lo interesante es que lo hizo el mismo día que Trump anunció nuevos aranceles globales. Hablamos del 2 de abril. Presentó estos famosos aranceles como parte del llamado Día de la Liberación. Justamente y ocasionalmente, pues ese día, Pam Bondi vendió entre 1 y 5 millones de dólares en acciones de Trump Media. Amigos, una jugada que claramente se ve que fue beneficiada por información anticipada, ¿no? Recordemos que horas antes Trump publicó en Truth Social que era un buen momento para comprar acciones y luego anunció esta pausa de 90 días en los aranceles, lo cual, pues bueno, generó fuertes movimientos en los mercados. Obviamente, quien tenía esta información antes tenía oro puro, ¿no?, en las manos. El senador demócrata Adam Schiff también habló sobre esto y lo resumió perfectamente en este mensaje. Escuchemos.
You've heard about the meme coin by now. This is, I think, the logo of the meme coin. The president's most brazen cashing in. A corrupt effort that's already made him and his family billions of dollars between its soaring values and the trading fees. Now, this meme coin's gone up and down in value, but the thing is, every time it gets traded, every time it's bought or sold, this guy gets a cut. He gets the fees estimated already at the value of hundreds of millions of dollars. It's like posting his Venmo account online, inviting personal monetary tributes from foreign powers, foreign investors, or anyone else who's willing to pay up. You've heard about the private dinner that they're offering associated with this meme coin. The top 220 meme coin owners, many of whom are foreign investors, invited to a private dinner with the President of the United States. Businesses are buying and jockeying to be one of the favored few who also get a private audience with him if they're willing to buy millions of meme coins, not to mention a personal tour of the White House. But beyond the meme coins and the dinner parties, there's something else also brewing behind the scenes. As I speak, Eric, Trump, and Don Jr. are getting into the action, jetting around the world, building their own financial empire in the crypto business space. In Dubai, the Trump family's World Liberty financial firm announced a joint venture capital firm backed by the government of Abu Dhabi that would invest $2 billion using Trump digital currency. Now, I know it's hard to keep all these billions apart. You got the $2 billion investment in Jared Kushner by the Saudis. You got $5.5 billion investment by other Gulf nations in Trump properties. You got $2 billion here, $5.5 billion there, another $2 billion here, and pretty soon you're talking about serious money for the Trump family. This deal alone will generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and fees for the Trump family. So that's the art of the deal with this president.
Adam Schiff lo dejó muy claro. ¿Quién dentro del gobierno sabía de este cambio repentino en los aranceles? ¿Quién se benefició económicamente antes de que el público lo supiera? Pues ya tenemos una respuesta, ¿no? Hablamos pues, de Pam Bondi. Señores, esto es tráfico de información privilegiada y es en su máxima expresión. ¿Cómo no va a estar claro que recibió datos directamente de Trump antes de que se hicieran públicos? O sea, ella sabía perfectamente el momento en el cual tenía que vender. Y ojo, señores, que esto podría ser solo la punta del iceberg, porque probablemente salgan más transacciones turbias de Pam Bondi. Quizás compró justo cuando las acciones estaban bajadas, o hizo movimientos muy similares antes de otros anuncios claves. Lo grave aquí, señores, no es solo el enriquecimiento ilícito, sino el costo que esto tiene para el público. Cuando alguien en su posición vende tantas acciones, eso pues afecta directamente el valor de la compañía, ¿no? Perjudica a los pequeños inversionistas, o sea, es decir, el ciudadano en común, el pequeño. Ellos se enriquecen desde dentro del sistema. Y Trump, pues bueno, él no solo convirtió los planes de retiro, de muchos por cierto, en una broma, porque pasamos de tener un 401k a un 201k, y todo con la ayuda de esta misma persona, la fiscal general. Mientras tanto, pues los regalos multimillonarios siguen llegando, ¿no? Porque sí, señores, Trump acaba de recibir ese pequeño obsequio de Qatar, un jet privado, y eso también fue criticado por el senador Adam Schiff, que lo denunció de esta forma. Escuchemos.
Trump gets rich, you get screwed, over and over and over again. It's obvious to anyone who looks, but it bears repeating. He does not care about you. He does not care about making your life better. He does not care that prices are soaring or that home ownership seems impossible. He doesn't care if you have to choose between rent or groceries, let alone whether you'll be able to take that family on a vacation that you've dreamed of. He doesn't care if the health care you rely on gets cut or your local Social Security office closes down. He doesn't care. If it helps pay for his billionaire tax cuts, it's all the same to him. He does not care. Trump cares about one thing and one thing only. The same thing he cared about when he wrote this book. And the same thing he's focused on every day of this presidency. Deals to make himself richer, to make his family richer, to make his billionaire friends richer. And my colleagues, he is succeeding. He is succeeding beyond his wildest imagination. He will likely make more money in the next 4 years than he did in his entire life up to that point. In fact, he probably already has. With new gold-plated skyscrapers around the world and a suite of new golf courses to match. A fancy new plane, a speedy new Tesla with the richest man in the world in the passenger seat. A crypto empire and projects around the world that will keep the gravy train going for generations. And no matter what wreckage he leaves behind here, he knows that he can head off to one of those gold-plated skyscrapers look down on the rest of us and chuckle at his good fortune. The art of the deal.
Lo increíble es que quieren hacernos creer que este avión va a ser una pieza de museo para su futura biblioteca presidencial. Pero amigos, no hay que dejarnos engañar. Esa biblioteca será un proyecto con fines de lucro. Probablemente ni siquiera se construya en muchos años. Mientras tanto, pues ese jet estará a disposición de Trump para lo que se le antoje, ¿no? Y todo eso financiado con dinero opaco, proveniente de donaciones que van directamente a un fondo que parece más bien un pozo sin fondo de corrupción. Y pasemos al último tema porque el Congreso de los Estados Unidos también, señores, ha estado bastante ardiente en las últimas semanas. Pasemos a lo que sería la hipocresía del movimiento MAGA. Esta hipocresía muy descarada es la que terminó exponiendo el senador MAGA Bernie Moreno, ¿no? Y bueno, fue nada menos que el senador Chris Murphy quien lo enfrentó cara a cara en pleno del Senado. Antes de ver este enfrentamiento entre Murphy y Moreno, quiero que veamos lo que dijo el día de hoy Jamie Raskin en la Cámara de Representantes, porque, señores, un discurso que encendió la chispa de todo esto. Escuchemos.
This plaque honors the extraordinary individuals who bravely protected and defended this symbol of democracy on January 6, 2021. Their heroism will never be forgotten. Well, alas, Mr. Speaker, their heroism seems already to have been forgotten by some of our colleagues. The plaque exists. We've got the plaque. It's been produced. And yet the Speaker of the House refuses to put the plaque up. President Trump wants a fund for January 6th. That's good, right? No, he wants a fund for the rioters' families. He wants a fund for the insurrectionists that he pardoned, not for the police officers. Will my colleagues say anything about that? At the very least, let's put up the plaque to honor these officers. Not a single member of the majority has given us one reason why this plaque, which is completed, has not been hung in the Capitol of the United States. Why not? And if you don't respect the law enforcement officers and the police who fought tooth and nail for us that day, at least respect the rule of law. They're supposed to be up 2 years.
Y es que Jamie Raskin no pudo haberlo dicho mejor. Donald Trump no solo perdonó a los insurrectos que atacaron al Congreso en su nombre, también se los recompensa y se los celebra públicamente, como si fuesen patriotas. Se reúne con los líderes de los Proud Boys, de los Oath Keepers, los trata como colegas. Pero cuando se trata de rendir homenaje a los verdaderos héroes, por ejemplo, aquellos policías que defendieron el Capitolio ese 6 de enero, literalmente salvaron vidas. Los mismos republicanos dicen que no. Una placa en su honor, ni pensarlo. Aún más cuando vemos este show que se montó Bernie Moreno pretendiendo que le importan los policías, solo para quedar completamente destrozado por Chris Murphy en este clip. Escuchemos.
We agree that we should defend law enforcement. Let's do it now. Not next week, not next month, because between now and then, we're going to lose more Larry Hendersons. I find that unacceptable. I would imagine to my colleague, what the families tomorrow of the 234 slain officers, what they would feel like for them to come to the U.S. Capitol and say, look, in this time of Democrats versus Republicans where they can't agree on anything seemingly, they came together to say, today, we will never allow another federal police officer to be harmed in the line of duty.
Mr. President, you're right. The senator from Ohio was not here on January 6th, and your political affiliation mattered that day. It mattered that day. Those rioters were here to harm not allies of President Trump, but opponents of President Trump. They had a gallows outside with Mike Pence's name on it. They were searching the halls of the Capitol for people who opposed Donald Trump's agenda. So I agree with you that it would be wonderful and lovely to remove this debate from politics. But on that day, there were bad people here seeking to do violence based upon the political affiliations of people in this building. And the reason that they were pardoned was because President Trump supported the violence so long it was in his name. So yes, it does matter what happened. Not just on that day, but when Trump issued the pardons, because it provides this message of endorsement to violence so long as it's violence that Donald Trump supports. That puts officers in jeopardy all over the country. If the potential perpetrators of violence against police officers have an idea in their head that if they're doing it in support of Donald Trump, they have a pretty good chance to get away with it. I don't think anyone who assaults a police officer should get out of jail early. And so let me put the question to you. Maybe we can find common ground right now. I recited to you the violence that was perpetrated on police officers here by 3 specific rioters. Do you support Donald Trump's decision to let those 3 individuals out of jail early? I think it'd be important for you as a Republican member to say that you oppose Donald Trump's decision to let those perpetrators out of jail early. And we could have common cause today in that we both oppose all early releases of individuals who attack police officers. So do you agree with me that it was wrong to release those 3 individuals early from prison?
As my colleague knows, again, better than I do, the President of the United States is given a constitutional authority for pardon.
Regardless of whether he has that power, do you agree with his decision?
And there's no mechanism in which this body can change that. But what we can change is what happens from here forward.
But let me explain to the gentleman why I objected. I abhor attacks on police officers, all police officers, and no matter the motive. But that is not the position of Republicans in the Senate. On the day that President Trump was sworn into office, he pardoned scores of violent felons who beat police officers. And my Republican colleagues, almost to a member, cheered him on and supported him. Donald Trump pardoned David Dempsey, who on January 6th beat Capitol and D.C. police officers with his hands, feet, flagpoles, crutches, broken pieces of furniture, anything else that he could find that could be used as a weapon. He teamed up with another rioter who pulled back one police officer's gas mask while Dempsey sprayed pepper spray in his eyes. He hit another police officer over the head with a metal crutch with so much force that it cracked the protective shield of the officer's gas mask, causing him to collapse as his ears started ringing. Donald Trump also pardoned DJ Rodriguez. On January 6, Rodriguez pushed through the crowds, found a police officer, and put a taser to his head. When the police officer screamed out in pain and recoiled from the shock, Rodriguez attacked him again, tasering him this time in the neck. The officer was done. He collapsed, unconscious. Another officer pulled his lifeless body to safety. That attack ended that officer's career. Thomas Webster was pardoned by Donald Trump, too. Webster attacked police officers with a flagpole. He tackled one officer to the ground, dragged him by the helmet, ripped off his gas mask to allow tear gas to seep inside, and held the officer down so that other rioters could brutally kick him. I oppose all violence against all police officers. So I don't understand why there seems to be an exemption for the violence that was perpetrated against the officers who protect us. Your bill proposes a new mandatory minimum for assaults against police officers that you are not applying to the officers who beat the people who protect us. They were let out of jail free. DJ Rodriguez, David Dempsey, Thomas Webster. Republicans cheered as they were let out of jail before their sentence was completed. And so if we're serious about protecting police officers, then we need to protect all police officers. If police officers are protecting Democrats, because that's who those rioters were here to kill or here to hurt, then those assaults should matter. If Donald Trump says the assault is okay, that shouldn't matter. Yes, I have stood by the side of the families of slain or injured police officers. But think about the families of those officers who were brutally beaten here at the Capitol. Think about the officer who was dragged unconscious from the site. His attacker was let out of jail, no mandatory minimum. Politics shouldn't have anything to do with our collective decision to stand up against attacks on police officers. So I offer this objection because I just don't feel like this bill is on the level until we have agreement in this chamber that President Trump doesn't get to decide which attacks on police officers we care about and which ones we don't. We shouldn't pass this bill until Republicans make it clear that they oppose all attacks on police, no exceptions, no exemptions. Republicans need to loudly oppose President Trump's pardons, because if you don't, you are sending a message that if you are carrying out attacks on police officers in the name of President Trump's political agenda, or you are carrying out attacks on police officers who are defending Democrats, that those attacks might end up being pardoned or excused. And our nation just fades away. What makes our nation great fades away if violence is okay if it's in service of a particular political agenda, or if the attacks are in service of the president. So I do take attacks against our police officers seriously. But I don't think we should move forward legislation that implicitly has exemptions in it. And so let's get on the same page. Let's come to a collective decision as a body that we care about all violence against police officers. Let's hear every member of this body condemn President Trump's pardons. Let's come to the conclusion that politics should never play a role in enforcing our laws against police violence. And I think that my Republican colleagues will rue the day that they look the other way when Donald Trump said that it is okay to beat police officers over the head with flagpoles, to taser them to the point that they were unconscious, just because you are serving President Trump's political agenda. That's not a side issue. That's not a fringe issue. That issue of endorsement of political violence, it may be central to the question of whether this democracy survives. So I know we have a pending vote and our colleagues are eager to get home. I look forward to continuing a conversation with my colleague.
Qué manera, señores, de ponerlo en su lugar. Así es como se tiene que hacer. El senador Murphy lo hizo excelente. No más discursos vacíos. No más dejar pasar esta hipocresía descarada del MAGA. Eso es exactamente lo que se necesita. Que se diga la verdad. Que se enfrente el cinismo de estos políticos que hablan de valores mientras respaldan la violencia, el odio y la corrupción. Amigos, muchísimas gracias por haberme acompañado en esta noche, en esta emisión. Les pido por favor que le den un like, compartan con sus amigos, suscríbanse a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Recuerden que estaremos haciendo emisiones todos los días, 1 en la mañana, 1 en la noche, trayendo las actualizaciones más importantes desde los Estados Unidos. Nos vemos en el próximo. Hasta luego.